Hello, everyone. Welcome to week 13, module 13 in our critical reasoning course. This week, we're going to be focusing on fake news and social media. So, the chapter that I've asked you to read out of the Vaughan textbook is chapter 7 on fake news. But in this video, what I want to do is kind of explain what I have in mind for this module, what I want you to do and what to think about as you're working through the material this week. All right, so we're focusing on fake news and social media. One of the reasons why I've put these two ideas, these two concepts together, is because so much of our news we get nowadays through the internet, through social media. I mean, maybe not everyone. I myself, I still like to buy magazines and to read print news, but most of us, including myself, most of the time we get our news through online sources or just simply through social media. And so, because fake news comes in the form of social media so often, that's why I'm putting these ideas together, and I want us to think about these topics in conjunction for this module. So let's begin by talking about Chapter 7, Fake News out of the Von text. Now, I certainly want you to read and pay close attention to this chapter. But the reason why I want you to pay attention to it is because I think that it's actually already out of date. And that's actually quite interesting. This is the third edition, which actually came out this year in 2025. In fact, I actually helped when with the editing process of this particular edition. I was one of the peer reviewers back in 2023 back when I was a visiting professor at UTSA in San Antonio. I spent a few months looking through the chapters and giving my thoughts and my opinions on how it could be improved and so forth. And one of the things that stands out to me now, after it's been published, is that this particular chapter is already kind of needing to be revised. And that's largely because of AI, the development of large language models, these learning machines, and different advancements that we've already seen, especially with things like Sora, which is this new app that can pretty much create any sort of image that you want. You can have, different people doing all sorts of different things. It's actually kind of grotesque what you can do with Sora, but different ways in which you can use AI now to create fake news, or more specifically, to create what's known as deep fakes. And a lot of times this is done just for, for comedy purposes or just for entertainment, but it can also be very, very detrimental in numerous different ways. Right, so I think that that's a clear way in which the chapter is already kind of outdated. It's also outdated with some of the what's going on with social media these days, and I think certainly some of the things that we're seeing with the Trump administration. So, for instance, the Trump administration had a report that came out, and it was clearly fabricated. It was created by AI, and you might think that some of these things are really kind of problematic in certain ways. And so none of this is really explicitly discussed in the chapter. And so that's something that I want you to think about. Think about how outdated this chapter already is, even though it was published this year. Indeed, when we think about what's going on in our online experience nowadays, it looks like the internet is, in a sense, kind of eating itself. So much of the content that's actually online now is AI generated content. And so, since AI, these are large language models, and they learn based upon online content, well, then, they're just sort of learning based upon other AI content that was already created. And so it's just this sort of revolving door. And the online experience that people are having nowadays is just very, very different from what it once was. Even back when this particular edition of the book was being written. Likewise, Vaughn points out in the chapter, the importance of using Google or other websites like Wikipedia very carefully. Right, these are interesting and helpful search engines, but when you're doing research, you want to treat them not as the gospel, right? They're not necessarily going to just give you the absolute truth. In fact, Google, in my own opinion, is actually a pretty terrible website nowadays. It's no longer the search engine that it used to be, and that's for numerous reasons. A lot of times, my students don't realize that Google is actually AI. It's run by an AI platform now. In fact, as far as I'm understanding correctly, Google is using YouTube to train its AI. So you can just imagine how problematic that might be if you're relying on a website like Google to as your search engine. And none of this is explicitly discussed in the chapter. So that's again, these are the things that I want you to pay attention to and to think about when you're going through and reading the chapter. These are things that will be on your assignment on the quiz for this particular week, and it could come up on your final exam as well. But so, in addition to focusing on and looking through this chapter with an eye of trying to think about how things might be a little bit outdated now, I also want you to read and pay close attention to a very nice article written by a philosopher named Thai Nguyen. The article is called "Escape the Echo Chamber." It's kind of a pop philosophy article that was written for the everyday person to think about our online experience and social media and so forth. In this article, Nguyen makes a distinction between echo chambers and epistemic bubbles. Echo chambers sort of teach us not to trust certain sources, while epistemic bubbles, these sort of prevent us from hearing about or knowing about different information, different sources. So I think that Nguyen does a really nice job of laying out some of those terms and cashing out what exactly he means by these and how that actually relates to our online experience with social media and so forth. And then once you've done that, I also want you to watch a lecture that Thai Nguyen gave. The lecture is called "The Gamification of Public Discourse," where Nguyen really gets into some of the behind the scenes sort of manipulation of our thought process and how a lot of this looks like it's kind of trying to get us to pay attention to certain things as a kind of moral panic or get to have a kind of moral outrage because the more we watch certain things, the more money that people are making. And so there's an incentive to continue creating this fake news and creating these echo chambers and gamifying our everyday lives as we're spending it online and social media platforms. So these are the things that I want you to pay attention to and to think about as you're working through this module. So go ahead and do that.